因为那个海底电缆不是只有台湾用，台湾跟国际的彼此之间的连结是非常密切的，也会影响国际的合作、国际的通讯。国际社会也看到中国不是只有在台湾的海域里面去影响海底电缆，在其他国家的海域也有。
Why are undersea cables so critical to Taiwan, the region, and global community? Also, U.S. Congress has been working on legislations related to undersea cable pertaining to Taiwan. How can Taiwan and U.S. take their cooperation to the next level? And finally, how does undersea cable resiliency fit into Taiwanese government's $40 billion US special defense budget? Hello and welcome to Taiwan Talks, everybody. I'm Wen-Ti Sung. Joining us tonight are distinguished speakers. First, friend of the show, Raymond Sung, now returning as Deputy Minister of Taiwan's Ocean Affairs Council. And we also have Jason Shi, a Senior Fellow at the Hudson Institute. Thank you for coming, Jason, all the way, and thank you for coming back, Raymond. Great to have you.
Thank you.
Great to be here.
All right, let's jump right in. Raymond, why don't I start with you? Undersea cable, tell us about why is it important and why should we care?
It's part of the international connectivity, the necessary network. And of course, the digital life is so important for the modern life so that people wanted to be connected to the world. So it's a part of the global infrastructure. And secondly, that we found that some vulnerabilities in the system because the cross-ocean inter-continent network is subject to various damages or risks due to natural causes. And now, in the recent years, we found these deliberate sabotage activities, especially for those dark vessels engaging in these so-called gray zone operations. So people were aware of being the awareness of protecting the global system becoming to the more prominent faces nowadays.
All right, so consideration about gray zone threats is definitely one factor. How about you, Jason?
Yeah, look, undersea cable carries the world's 97% of data traffic. And it basically controls all the semiconductor manufacturing data, financial terminal data, military and civil control and command data. And for Taiwan, there's 24 undersea cables connected to the main island of Taiwan and as well as the islands such as Kinmen, Mazu, and Penghu. And really, it is an artillery of the data choke point and in the Indo-Pacific region. And imagine if one of these cable is cut, it means that the global traffic will be impacted. And not to mention that globally there's other regions that are also having the same issues as well. But for Taiwan, it's really our lifeblood, if you will, for the data traffic as well as the communication.
For sure, yes. And Taiwan, I understand that, Jason, you recently gave a testimony to U.S. Congress, right, about this. So I wonder if you can expand a little bit more on what will be the potential implications if Taiwan's undersea cable are cut for the economic, the financial system, and maybe for global tech supply chain.
Yeah, Taiwan sits in the geopolitical flashpoint in the Indo-Pacific region. And undersea cable really represents all the important connectivity that connects both military technology and as well as the government data portal. Once this infrastructure are compromised or damaged, it means that global connectivity would also be impacted. Imagine TSMC now account for the world's most 97% of the advanced chips are made by TSMC, but if the undersea cable is cut, it means all the manufacturing data will not be updated in real time. And that will really produce a manufacturing disruption globally. And secondly, if Taiwan's undersea cables are cut, it means that this region also controls global 90% of the energy shipments in the Indo-Pacific region would also be impacted as well. So it's not only the connectivity and communication, but also the energy artillery as well. So thinking about this, we're looking at a day of a undersea cable damage would account for 55 million loss on the Taiwan island alone.
55 million US dollars per day.
Yeah, and not to mention globally, it is in an order of magnitude of its damage and disruption.
All right, that sounds like some major implication there for sure on the more economic side of things. Taiwan being a key element in the global connectivity and key supplier of high tech, like you said, 97% of advanced chips, for example, are provided by Taiwan. One other thing that Jason mentioned is the idea of Taiwan as a flashpoint. Raymond, can you enlighten us about what would be some potential military implications should Taiwan's cables get cut?
In the past 5 years, we found about 5 times or 8 times more often that the cases of sabotage of the disruption of the telecommunity undersea cable were happening. And so the artificial intervention is a very, very clear tendency. Of course, the strategic position of Taiwan is particularly sensitive nowadays. Of course, geopolitically, Taiwan sits on the central point of the pivotal point of the First Island chain. The sabotage of undersea cable falls within the one of the tools that's utilized by the Chinese backing vessels. And so it's part of the Chinese gray zone operations against Taiwan. So those were strategic implications I mentioned by Jason just now. And of course, the security implication of the sabotage of the undersea cable was a part of the threats or the coercions, and not only physically or the real disruption to with the huge economic and technology implications, as Jason just indicated, but also psychologically. It's a part of the political warfare or coercion against Taiwan to show that we are doing something, and maybe at the precursor of the full or larger scale military drills or exercises against Taiwan. So it's part of, it falls within the whole array of coercive means, or shall we say the salami slicing gray zone operations waged by China.
All right, so part of a bigger campaign of coercion that China tried to leverage against Taiwan. One thing Raymond mentioned was about, I guess, redundancy, I think. I'm wondering, Jason, what do you think about the current level of Taiwan redundancy measures in terms of protecting Taiwan's undersea cables, especially in the event of an attempt at instilling digital isolation against Taiwan?
Yeah, so the whole thing about gray zone warfare is anything below the threshold of war. And what PRC is trying to do is to develop a situation where it establishes the fact that Taiwan is under Beijing's narrative. So this type of cutting off the communication creates social panic, chaos, and as well as unrest. And because the way these cables are cut is hard to detect. Sometimes they are cut and then they were detected days or weeks after. So it's very hard to really detect or prevent such behavior. So when that happens, you fall into a situation to respond and put out fire. You will always be managing the crisis. So going back to your question, the redundancy is everything. It has 2 components. One is your hardware aspect. The hardware needs to be hardened. Do we have strong enough of antivirus software that can detect any sort of cyber intrusion through the DDoS, basically to flood your internet portal with a large amount of traffic? And then lastly, whether we can build resilience on the national security level, on the national defense level. This is not just the issues with the Coast Guard or our Ocean Affairs Committee. It is the issue of our national defense, and we need to look at it very seriously.
One thing Jason mentioned, however, was the challenge with detection. And Raymond, this is one thing I want to ask you about, which is that we know there have been multiple incidents where our cable get cut. And when it does get cut, oftentimes the story goes, it's cut by innocuous civilian fishing boats. And those are accidental damage, quote unquote. How do we tell, though, whether those are accidental or whether those are planned operations?
Yeah, if we caught unexpectedly, then it's very, very difficult for us to really detect. But nowadays we have facilitated a whole system of surveillance and monitoring and also mapping the locations of vessels that appears in the sensitive areas or prohibition areas, what we call. so that we strengthen our capabilities to a large extent. But the typical case is that the sea is huge, and there are some multitude of vessels operating in the same water. And it's difficult to pinpoint the direct attribution of some human behavior to the disruption of the undersea cable. So we need to really have the capability to point our fingers to a specific vessel which appears in the sensitive areas at the point when the disruption happens. And we also need to have evidence to really show to the prosecution and the court that there's a direct causal link between the activities conducted from the ship and the disruption of the cable. So which means that we have to facilitate not only the surveillance and monitoring, and we need to to quickly deploy our vessels to really capture or stop the ship from escaping. And also we need to have a very, very good radar and other technological means to really show the location of the vessels, including using the AIS system. And then we also need to have a good prosecution policy and the capability to gather evidence. And we need to make our legislation, domestic legislation, full to really find those intentional sabotage of the undersea cable punishable under our own law. So either of those elements will be essential for a successful pursuing the responsible parties of those actors. And if we can accomplish that, we can have some deterrence effect to show that Taiwan is well prepared, and we have a whole system to respond to that.
It sounds like definitely quite some progress that Taiwan's government has been making here. There seems to be legislative, there's be operational, there's more technical surveillance-oriented measures that are being taken. All of the goal, I suppose, to move towards greater deterrence, because you don't want to be always playing catch and react and playing whack-a-mole, right? Speaking of enhancing greater surveillance capabilities, one factor here, of course, as we mentioned, this matters not only for Taiwan, but also for the broader international community. And U.S., of course, is one of the actors that has a stake here. So let's talk about what happened on the U.S. side lately when it comes to Taiwan's undersea cables. On the vulnerability and repair of undersea cables, U.S. Rear Admiral and Intelligence Director of the U.S. Navy, Mike Brooks, recently said this during a hearing before the U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission. Take a look.
Cables are cut about 200 times a year, so approximately every 36 hours. Most folks don't understand that happens, though, because service providers are paid to provide that service, and so they built redundancy into their networks, providing resiliency. And so any part of any plan to protect cables need to include investing in a degree of redundancy and then the capability to quickly repair as well as lay new cables.
All right, Jason, I know that you obviously work in Washington, D.C. Can you shed some light in terms of how D.C. is looking at Taiwan's undersea cable issue as perhaps an increasingly security-oriented, not just commercial-oriented issue?
Yeah, absolutely. So I also raised the same issues during the testimony that Taiwan is at the centerpiece of this cable cut incidents. And these incidents are random, but their patterns are predictable, and also they follow the same similar pattern and synchronized in different regions as well. And so really we need to look at this from the whole theater perspective, that how would a single incident, when happened, synchronized in multiple locations in the same behavior, would impact the regional, multi-dimensional, multi-sequential reactions. So what PRC is trying to do is not just create a single incident. They're trying a series of incidents to test your limit. So basically they're testing at what point that your system would break down. And then once your system breaks down, then they would follow on with a series of other disruptive actions as well. So to your question, there are three things we must do. Number one is to enhance the redundancy, both from the software and the hardware perspective. We need a hardened physical infrastructure, both on the cable itself as well as the terminals. And right now we have 2 concentrated terminals in metropolitan area. We must diversify those terminals. And then secondly, we must shorten or enhance our repairment speed and repairment interval. Right now, 15 out of the 24 cables are damaged, and these are due to the natural degradation of the cable itself or the gray zone activities. We can't tell. But then the issue is that every cable takes around 40 days to repair. So how do we shorten from 40 days to 20 days, from 20 days to have something backup as well? And then also we must conduct a stress test on our cable system. So at what minimum threshold we must maintain in order to keep island functioning? I think that's very important. And then thirdly, we don't have a cable repair ship, and that's the big problem. Right now, there are over 500 undersea cable sets around the world, and then Taiwan is connected by 24 of them. And Japan has 3 repair ships, but Taiwan has none. So my whole plea to both Ministry of Digital Affairs and also our Ocean Affairs Council is that Taiwan should build our own indigenous cable repair ship. We must have our own indigenous cable repair ship within the next 3 years. Right now, we hire outside contractors to fix those cables, but we don't know what type of components they use. They could be using Chinese components, and then all these things are security risks as well. So I think there's a host of things we must do to enhance the cable resilience. And lastly, my testimony in the U.S. Congress is also to make a plea to our American friends that any type of cable compromise or sabotage is also a damage to U.S. strategic assets in the region. So U.S. must reestablish the International Cable Convention. Right now, the International Cable Convention was built in 1884 when cable was still the telegraph wire. Right now, it's a fiber optic cable. It's a completely different volume and data transmission type. So I think we need to reestablish that, and U.S. should play a role and include Taiwan into a part of this international convention.
All right, that's important for sure. It's really interesting to know that those conventions, the international law regulations, are still dating all the way back to 2 centuries ago, isn't it?
Is that right? Yeah.
All right, well, one thing Jason mentioned, of course, was about interdependence between U.S. and Taiwan security, including on undersea water cable level. And Raymond, I'm just wondering, can you just shed light for us a little bit more? What stake does U.S. have in Taiwan's undersea cable security?
Of course, U.S. has a huge stake at the security of Taiwan, and U.S. has been backing the status quo not to be unilaterally changed by force, and those are the pivotal pillar to the Indo-Pacific international order and the prosperity of the Indo-Pacific region. And beyond that, U.S. is committed to the security of Taiwan and committed to the defense of Taiwan to allow Taiwanese people to make our own decisions. So those are the overall strategic commitments that U.S. made to Taiwan. But on this part, of course, Taiwan is such a critical point for the pivotal position for the international connectivity and trade routes and open and free access to the other economies. And so for me, that the act that now under review for the U.S. Congress really advances on 2 additional points apart from what Jason just pointed out. One is the intelligence sharing from the U.S. sources. Now we know that around Taiwan there's constantly a huge number of vessels which is of dubious behavior patterns and engaging in several types of gray zone activities. We need to know more about those vessels. We need to utilize AI and other technological means to really identify those vessels, and we need to really know what they are doing around our waters. So intelligence sharing from other sources from our allies, including the United States, will be hugely important for Taiwan. The second, that U.S. is committed in this act to enhance the MDA capability, marine domain awareness capability of Taiwan, which we also need. And apart from that, the repair capability of Taiwan, we also wanted to really realize. Now we are part of the international alliances, like utilizing the Yokohama repair zone or the Southeast Indian Ocean's repair zones. But that's true that we need to employ the other repair ships. And as far as I know, that the government has a plan to really set up a repairing system, not only serving the telecommunication cables, but also for the offshore wind farms cables. Of course, that's due to the limits of the investment, so we need a boost on that as well, yes.
All right, so those are some promising programs of action that Raymond helped us shed light on. And Jason, any scope, how optimistic are you that these kind of cooperation might have potential for translating into more operational forms or more institutionalized over time, so it doesn't become just like a one-off thing?
Yeah, look, U.S. Congress is taking this very seriously. And as you know, there's a bill in the Senate proposed by Senator John Curtis called Taiwan Undersea Cable Resilience Initiatives Act. And through my testimony, I've also called for U.S. to pass such a very important act and to develop a U.S.-Taiwan collaboration in the international undersea cable development, both from the legal aspect and then also from the technological aspect as well. And Taiwan obviously has a strong ICT supply chain capability, and also our semiconductor is globally strong, and so we have a lot we can offer, and then we can also co-develop and co-produce with the U.S. as well.
All right, those are some important program action for sure. So let's come back to closer to Taiwan and look at what's been happening lately in terms of Taiwan's self-defense build out self-defense capabilities. To strengthen Taiwan's resilience, Taiwan has proposed a defense special budget of up to 1.25 trillion Taiwanese dollars, which is about 40 billion US dollars. Let's hear about the rationale from Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te.
政府推动国防特别预算，进行各项国防建设，也是要向国际社会传递一个明确的讯号：台湾有决心、有能力、有意愿。 保卫自己，守护和平，捍卫主权。
All right, Raymond. So those special defense budget are sitting in Taiwan's parliament at the moment, awaiting confirmation and voting. Can you shed some light about what's the stake involved here? What signal does it send if it passes or if it doesn't pass? And if there's any element about undersea cable security as well?
As far as the OAC is concerned, that we have part of the projects on the strengthening the capability of our detection and monitoring system, like we purchase the drones and the underwater unmanned vehicles, which will be, and also underwater sonar system, and to really enhance our capability to detect any threats to the integrity of the cable system. And that was included part of the transformation of Coast Guard, which is critical importance for Taiwan nowadays to really respond to the everyday happening gray zone threats and coercive actions on the sea. And of course, China, as Jason pointed out, China has wanted to do everything to really undermine Taiwan's jurisdiction and validity of Taiwan's maritime domains through their slicing tactics. And so that the Coast Guard is standing on the forefront of that. We need real investment from the state. and part of it is includes in the special budget of defense. So we really wanted to overcome those political hurdles and to see those being passed by our parliament.
Thank you for that. And Jason, how do you look at a special defense budget at the moment, and what signal is it sending?
Yeah, I have openly called for the opposition party to support the special defense budget. And then, when it comes to national security, Taiwan's political parties must stand in unity. And this is also part of my testimony to show that Taiwan must demonstrate resolve and also back its words with action. So with the situation and also the threats that we're dealing with, time is really running out. It's really a matter of urgency, and to pass and then to develop resilience as part of the defense capability and preparedness. And when it comes to undersea cable and all other things that Raymond mentioned, it's really the frontline issue. And these are really the first line of defense. Once that gets passed, and then we are basically in the clear wartime zone. Right now, it's in the gray zone, and then we still have the ability to counter them, and then to deter, and then to develop way to kind of to push them away, and also to detect their early warning abilities. If we don't do so, tomorrow when we wake up, they will be at our front door.
All right, that's all the time we have. I'd like to thank you, Jason and Raymond, for both of you for your insights and comments today. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, that's our show. On behalf of our team here at Taiwan Talks, I'd like to thank you, viewers at home, for tuning in. Come and check us out on YouTube. And until next time, it's good night from us from Taipei.